Bibliomania by Gustave Flaubert. Hi, I'm Gary Lovisi, and this time we're going to take a look at this terrific, unbelievable story written by the famous French author. This was written in 1836 when he was barely 15 years old. It was his first story, and it's Bibliomania. It tells the story of intense, fanatic, excessive, compulsive book collecting at its most frantic and probably worst, because it's a tale of arson, murder, and all kinds of things. The book was published in a small little book in 1954 as a vellum wrap. It's a short story. This book is 42 pages with illustrations. Bibliomania. Its art is by Arthur Ward. It's from the miniature books from the Rodale Press, and it's from 1954. And there's an introduction, and then there's the story. And the story is that it's a tale of Giacomo, a monk whose obsessive, crazed desire to own love of books even overwhelms him, so the point that he leaves the church and becomes a famed book collector, and owns a bookstore, and he's looking for this famous book, which is a Bible called The Mystery of St. Michael. And he's looking everywhere for it, and in the book, some of the illustrations, there's Giacomo with his book collection, and he's looking everywhere for this book. The book is cool because it, and I'm going to read a couple of small sections from it about book collecting, of how he just talks about the obsessive, frantic book collector, and he says, these feverish and burning nights he passed among his books, Giacomo. He ran through the storerooms, he ran through the galleries of his library with ecstasy and delight. Then he stopped, his hair in disorder, his eyes fixed and sparkling, his hands warm and damp trembled on touching the wood of the shelves. He took a book, turned over the leaves, felt the paper, examined the gilding, the cover, the letters, the ink, the folds, and the arrangement of drawings for the word finis. Then he changed his place, put it on a higher shelf, and remained for entire hours looking at its title and form. Next he went to manuscripts, for they were his cherished children. And this gives you an idea, kind of a little bit about the frenzy, obsessive compulsiveness of book collecting. Flaubert really captures it quite well in his narration in this story. And while it's fiction, it really does definitely capture the frantic fanaticism of the book collector, especially the high-end antiquarian person that's looking for the one-of-a-kind item, the one special book, the one book that there's only one copy of, that only exists in one copy. Here's one of the other illustrations that he's searching for the book. He finally does find a copy of the book that exists, and it goes up for auction, and he finds out that the person that's selling the book, he's trying to offer to buy it from him outright, but the fellow won't sell it to him, and he finds out that there's another dealer that's also interested in the book, and Giacomo eventually, when he sees the book, ends up when the other he gets distraught because the other dealer gets wins the copy of the book in an auction. And what he does is he burns down the house of the other book dealer and breaks into the house and steals the book. And here's the illustration of the house of fire of the other book dealer, and he's sneaking in to try to get that book. And Flaubert describes the whole scene as Giacomo, he crossed several rooms, the floor trembled under his steps, the doors fell when he approached them, the beams hung down over his head. He ran into the midst of the fire, panting and furious. He needed that book. He must have it or death. He did not know where to direct his course, but he ran. At last he arrived before a partition which was intact. He broke it with a kick and saw an obscure and narrow apartment. He groped. He felt some books under his fingers. He touched one of them, took it and carried it away out of this room. It was the mystery of St. Michael. He retraced his steps like a man lost and in delirium. He leaped over the holes. He flew into the flame, but he did not find again the ladder which he had placed against the wall. He came to a window and descended outside, clinging with hands and knees to the rough surfaces. His clothing began to get on fire, and when he arrived at the street, he rolled himself into the gutter to put out the flames that were burning him. But he did save the book, and he got the book. And in the end, he was arrested for setting the fire to the other book dealer's house and for the murder of the book dealer. And spoiler alert, he
got arrested and he went to prison.
He got arrested and he went to prison, but at the time when he was sent to prison, the lawyer told him that the copy of the book that he got wasn't the only copy, that there was another copy that he had found in Paris, and that it all had been done for nothing, and that his copy wasn't the only one original copy left, and he just said he didn't care. And at the end, what he wanted was to see the Paris edition. And when he saw it, he just he grabbed it out of the lawyer's hands, looked it over, and then tore it all up so that his copy was the only one left. And that's how the story ends. Now that's the story. Now, you got to remember, this is about the insane hobby of bibliomania, and which a lot of book collectors have an understanding about. But the story was written in 1836, published in 1837, written by Gustave Flaubert when he was barely 15 years old. But it was based on an actual story, actual case, historic events that happened in 1836 in Spain. And it was a Spanish book collector, book dealer. His name was Don Vincente. And again, he was a monk who left the church because he wanted to be a book collector, and all he cared about was books, and all he cared about was getting certain books, certain rare books. He was in love with books. He was obsessed with books, and he was insanely desirous of being able to get the books that he wanted to get. So he was like the first bibliomaniac, the first crazed book collector, fanatic, frantic person, and it was a true person in history. In Barcelona, he did find, he was looking for a book called Furs et Ordinations, which was printed in 1482, and first book printed in Spain, and he wanted that book, and he finally did find it. And I'm just going to read a little bit from the introduction here that kind of puts it all in perspective, the actual true case of what happened. On the death of its owner, this book was offered at auction, and although Don Vicente put up everything he owned, he was outbid by Augustino Paxtot, a rival collector. Some nights later, Paxtot's house was mysteriously burned down, and he died in the flames. Don Vicente's shop was searched, and the book was found there. The bookseller made no attempt to deny his guilt and seemed to be only concerned for the safety of the book. His lawyer was able to establish that another copy of the book existed in Paris and argued from this that it could not be proved that the copy found in Don Vicente's shop was Paxtot's. But he was little aided by his client, who moaned loudly, "Alas, alas, my copy is not unique." Don Vicente was executed in Barcelona in 1836. And that's the story of the bibliomaniac, probably the first bibliomaniac of our modern times, by Gustave Flaubert. Short little story, 42-page book, which with the large type and the illustrations would probably, you got to go look it up and find this book story and read it. You'll enjoy it. It'll take you an hour to read, and you'll really get a good window into the eyes of the bibliomaniac and the true story that this is based on. I think it's interesting that it's a true crime story. It's a murder mystery that was solved, and where the guy was, the book collector was executed. So it did have an happy ending as far as my wife was concerned. The book collector was executed.
I could write a book too.
And anyway, I just hope you enjoyed this little sidebar kind of story. I think it's interesting. It was written so long ago, but it's something, you know, it's written by a master storyteller, a master French author, written so long ago, but it's so true today that it's almost scary a little bit. Thanks for looking. I hope you enjoyed this look at Bibliomania. Give us a thumbs up if you did. Thanks for looking.